Some of the most talented gay celebrities lost their lives to AIDS during the height of the epidemic. In this video, the famous file pays tribute to the talented individuals whose lives were tragically cut short by AIDS. We'll delve into their childhoods, the paths that led them to fame, the triumphs and trials of their careers, and the impact they left behind. From their groundbreaking successes to the intimate details of their personal struggles, these stories are as inspiring as they are heart-wrenching. So join us as we honor these incredible figures, not just for how they died, but for how they lived, right here on the famous file. Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury, the legendary frontman of Queen, was diagnosed with AIDS in 1987, though he kept his condition private for most of his life. Born in Zanzibar on September 5, 1946, Freddie had a childhood that set the stage for his future creativity and musical genius. His family hailed from Western India and practiced Zoroastrianism, a religion that emphasizes good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. They had moved to Zanzibar for his father Bomi's work as a cashier at the British Colonial Office. At the age of 7, he started piano lessons and quickly showed a knack for music. As he grew older, he attended St. Peter's School, beginning when he was 8. Teachers and classmates recognized his artistic talents early on, with one teacher even suggesting he adopt the nickname Freddie. His real name is Farouk Bulsara. At the age of 12, he formed his first band, the Hectics, with a group of friends. In the late 1960s, Freddie became friends with Tim Staffel, a member of a band called Smile, which included guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor. When Staffel left the band in 1970, Freddie stepped in as lead vocalist and suggested renaming the group Queen. By 1974, Queen had gained recognition with albums like The Queen 2 and hits like 7 Seas of Rye. But it was the 1975 release of A Night at the Opera that catapulted them to superstardom, thanks to the groundbreaking track, Bohemian Rhapsody. Mercury's charisma and connection with audiences were unparalleled. He turned concerts into theatrical spectacles, engaging fans with his extravagant costumes, dramatic movements, and playful interactions. Queen's performance at Live Aid in 1985 is considered one of the greatest live performances in rock history, with Mercury captivating the crowd of 72,000 at Wembley Stadium and millions watching worldwide. Mercury was the creative force behind many of Queen's most iconic hits, including Somebody to Love, We Are the Champions, Don't Stop Me Now, and Killer Queen. Despite his meteoric rise, Mercury faced significant challenges. As an immigrant with Zoroastrian roots, he often dealt with racism and prejudice in 1970s Britain. His name, accent, and appearance made him a target for racism and xenophobia, yet he rarely allowed these prejudices to overshadow his ambitions. Freddie's sexuality was another aspect of his identity that he had to navigate carefully, particularly in the conservative climate of the 1970s and 1980s. While Mercury was openly flamboyant and unapologetic on stage, he kept his personal life relatively private. During much of Queen's early career, society's stigma against LGBTQ+ individuals forced him to present a more ambiguous image. He maintained a long-term relationship with Mary Austin, a woman he often referred to as the love of his life, even as he privately explored relationships with men. Their bond was so profound that Freddie entrusted Mary with his estate after his death and gave her detailed instructions for the handling of his ashes. Decades later, in 2023, Mary sold many of Mercury's personal belongings at auction, and in 2024, she listed the singer's London home for $38 million. Jim Hutton, Mercury's partner during his final years, shared a different yet equally meaningful connection. Freddie Mercury's battle with AIDS was a private and difficult one. He was diagnosed in 1987, but he kept it a secret for several years. During this time, he continued to perform and work, including recording his famous Barcelona album with Montserrat Caballé. Mercury began treatment with the drug AZT, but by then, AIDS treatment was still in its early stages, and the drug's effectiveness was limited. During this time, Hutton stood by Freddie through his illness, helping him with private treatments. As the disease progressed, his health visibly declined. He lost weight and became increasingly frail. Despite this, he remained determined to keep his personal life private. Only in November 1991, when he was near death, did he publicly acknowledge his illness, revealing in a statement that he had been suffering from AIDS for some time. Mercury's death on November 24, 1991 came just a day after his public statement. His tragic death had a profound impact on both his loved ones and the world. The day after his death, Queen's of Bohemian Rhapsody returned to the charts, reaching new generations and cementing Mercury's legacy. In 1992, the Freddie Mercury tribute concert for AIDS awareness was held at Wembley Stadium, featuring legendary artists like Elton John, David Bowie, and George Michael. The event raised millions for AIDS research and led to the creation of the Mercury Phoenix Trust, a charity dedicated to fighting HIV/AIDS worldwide. Freddie Mercury remains one of the most iconic figures in music history, leaving behind a legacy that resonates far beyond his time. Keith Haring. Keith Haring was a groundbreaking American artist known for his vibrant, graffiti-inspired art and his activism. Born in Reading, Pennsylvania, on May 4, 1958, he was raised in a working-class family. His parents were supportive of his early interest in drawing, and Haring developed a passion for cartoons, particularly the works of Walt Disney and Dr. Seuss. This love for cartoons and animation would later influence his distinctive artistic style, which was often characterized by bold lines, bright colors, and dynamic figures. As a teenager, Haring's interest in art deepened, and he started to explore other forms of visual expression, including graffiti and street art. He was also exposed to the art world through his admiration for pop art legends like Andy Warhol. By the time he was 20, Haring had decided to pursue a professional art career, which led him to New York City in 1978. He enrolled at the School of Visual Arts, SVA, where he honed his skills and became part of the city's vibrant downtown art scene. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, New York was a hub for experimental art, and Haring quickly made a name for himself. He became known for creating spontaneous chalk drawings on empty advertising panels in subway stations, which quickly gained attention for their energy and unique visual style. These drawings featured simple, bold figures, often radiant babies, barking dogs, and dancing people, which became signature motifs in his later works. This led to his first solo show in 1982 at the Tony Shafrazi Gallery in New York, which was a huge success. Haring quickly became known for his use of bright colors and simple yet powerful figures. His work was featured in prominent exhibitions at the Whitney Museum of American Art and the Museum of Modern Art in New York, along with galleries and museums across Europe. By the mid-1980s, his work had been featured in major exhibitions, and he was collaborating with famous artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat. But Haring's life took a darker turn when he was diagnosed with HIV in 1988, which became a turning point in both his personal life and art. He used his work to advocate for social justice issues, including LGBTQ rights, drug addiction awareness, and, of course, AIDS awareness. His activism and work on behalf of people living with HIV earned him recognition beyond the art world. In 1989, he opened the Pop Shop in New York City, where his art was sold in a variety of forms, including t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. This move was controversial, with some art critics accusing him of commercializing his work, but Haring defended the shop, believing in making art accessible to a wider audience. Despite his illness, Haring's impact continued to grow. His murals, including the famous Crack is Whack mural in Harlem, became symbols of his commitment to using art for social change. He also worked on the Berlin Wall project in 1986, where he created art pieces on the actual wall, symbolizing his commitment to both political activism and human rights. Haring's career was also marked by several prestigious awards and honors. He was awarded the AIDS Foundation's Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in raising awareness about the disease, and his art was celebrated posthumously with major retrospectives at the Whitney Museum of American Art and the Los Angeles Museum of Contemporary Art. In 1990, just before his death, Haring was inducted into the Academy of Arts and Letters, a testament to his lasting legacy as an artist. Though he tragically passed away from AIDS-related complications in 1990, Haring's influence lives on. His work continues to be celebrated in exhibitions worldwide, and his foundation, the Keith Haring Foundation, remains active in supporting art, children's programs, and AIDS-related causes. Even after his death, his art continues to inspire new generations of artists and activists, solidifying his place as one of the most influential artists of his time.
Working on a painting here. I'm from New York. I've been in Europe for a few weeks working on projects in Paris and now.
Steven Stucker. Steven Stucker, best known for his role as Johnny Henshaw Jackson in the 1980 comedy classic Airplane, was diagnosed with AIDS in 1984. His career, which included not only his work in Airplane, but also appearances on TV shows like The Golden Girls and The Three's Company, was on the rise. However, in 1984, Stucker became one of the first actors to publicly announce that he had AIDS, a move that was groundbreaking at the time, when the disease was still highly stigmatized. At the height of the AIDS epidemic, Stucker's decision to speak out about his diagnosis was a significant moment in Hollywood. Many public figures were still hesitant to discuss their health status, but Stucker's openness helped raise awareness about the virus and its impact on the LGBTQ+ community, especially within the entertainment industry. Unfortunately, Stucker's health deteriorated rapidly, and he passed away on April 13, 1986, at the age of 38 due to AIDS-related complications. His death was part of a tragic wave of early AIDS-related deaths among celebrities, and it underscored the urgency of finding treatments and raising awareness about the virus. Stucker's legacy lives on, not only through his work in the Airplane, but also in his role as a pioneering figure in the fight against AIDS stigma. His bravery in speaking out during a time of fear and uncertainty helped pave the way for greater openness and activism around HIV/AIDS in Hollywood and beyond.
Oh, it's a big, pretty white plane with red stripes and curtains in the window and wheels, and it looks like a big tile.
Rudolf Nureyev. Rudolf Nureyev was a revolutionary ballet dancer and choreographer who became a global icon for his extraordinary talent and charisma. Born on March 17, 1938, on a Trans-Siberian train near Irkutsk, Soviet Union, Nureyev grew up in a poor Tatar Muslim family in Ufa, Russia. Rudolf's family struggled financially, but his mother nurtured his love for the arts by taking him to local dance and opera performances. Despite societal pressures and his father's initial disapproval, Rudolf began taking dance lessons at a young age. His natural talent quickly became apparent, and his determination to pursue a career in ballet only grew. At 17, Nureyev gained acceptance into the prestigious Vaganova Academy of Russian Ballet in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, where he studied under the renowned ballet instructor, Alexander Pushkin. Nureyev joined the Kirov Ballet, now Mariinsky Ballet, in 1958, where he quickly became a principal dancer. He became known for his interpretations of classical roles in The Swan Lake, The Sleeping Beauty, and Gisela. In 1961, Nureyev's career took a dramatic turn. While on tour with the Kirov Ballet in Paris, he defected to the West, making headlines worldwide. His defection made him a target of Soviet propaganda, and he was estranged from his family for many years. His defection was the first of its kind for a Soviet artist and marked the beginning of his international fame. After defecting, Nureyev's career flourished. He joined the Royal Ballet in London, where his partnership with Dame Margot Fonteyn became legendary. Together, they performed iconic roles in ballets such as Romeo and Juliet and The Swan Lake, earning critical and commercial success. Nureyev also expanded his career into choreography and artistic direction. He worked with major ballet companies worldwide, including the Paris Opera Ballet, where he served as artistic director from 1983 to 1989. Under his leadership, the company experienced a renaissance. Nureyev's personal life was as colorful and controversial as his career. Openly bisexual, he was known for his extravagant lifestyle and numerous romantic relationships. He had a long-term partnership with the Danish dancer Erik Brun, and his later years were spent with the American dancer Robert Tracy. However, he was arrested in the 1970s for drug possession, and his lavish spending habits, as well as his tumultuous relationships, were frequent tabloid fodder. In the late 1980s, Nureyev began showing signs of illness. He was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, a disease still heavily stigmatized at the time. Despite his declining health, he continued to perform and choreograph, showcasing his resilience and dedication to his art. Rudolf Nureyev passed away on January 6, 1993, at the age of 54. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy continues to inspire generations of dancers. His contributions to ballet redefined the role of male dancers and elevated the art form to new heights.
I know, it's, I would say that the only people in front.
Liberace. Born Wadzio Valentino. Liberace on May 16, 1919, in West Allis, Wisconsin. Liberace was the child of immigrant parents. His father was an Italian musician, and his mother was of Polish descent. From a young age, Liberace showed exceptional talent for the piano, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already performing classical recitals. However, classical music alone didn't satisfy him. Liberace wanted to entertain. He began incorporating showmanship into his performances, blending pop standards, jazz, and comedy with classical pieces. This unique style set him apart from other pianists and marked the beginning of his rise to fame. By the 1950s, Liberace was a household name, thanks to his popular television show, The Liberace Show. He became one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world, performing in sold-out venues across the globe. His over-the-top style, complete with candelabras, rhinestone-covered suits, and lavish stage sets, made him an icon of extravagance. He enjoyed unparalleled financial success, with residencies in Las Vegas, record-breaking tours, and merchandise that bore his name. Liberace was a true showman, often driving to his performances in custom-made, jewel-encrusted cars and wearing costumes that dazzled under the stage lights. Despite his public persona, Liberace's private life was shrouded in mystery. He never publicly came out as gay, fearing the backlash that could jeopardize his career during a time of widespread homophobia. Liberace maintained long-term relationships with men, most notably with Scott Thorson, who later sued him for palimony in a very public court case. Their relationship, marked by excess and turbulence, was chronicled in Thorson's memoir, which later inspired the film Behind the Candelabra. In the mid-1980s, Liberace was diagnosed with AIDS. Determined to keep his condition private, he insisted his declining health was due to a water retention issue. But by February 4, 1987, Liberace passed away, officially due to heart failure. A subsequent coroner's report confirmed that he had died of complications related to AIDS. He was one of the most famous figures of his time, yet his death reflected the stigma surrounding HIV/AIDS, with efforts even made to manipulate his autopsy report to conceal the truth.
You know, actually, that little bit of restriction with the weight of the costumes and the rings and all that, it makes it...
Robert Reed. America knew him as Mike Brady, the wise and loving father of the iconic The Brady Bunch family. But behind the wholesome on-screen persona, Robert Reed lived a complex life filled with career highs, personal struggles, and a tragic end. Born John Robert Reitz Jr. on October 19, 1932 in Highland Park, Illinois, Reed grew up in a small-town Midwest setting. He developed a love for performing early on, studying at Northwestern University before heading to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London to hone his craft. Reed's breakout role came in the critically acclaimed series The Defenders, where he showcased his dramatic chops. But in 1969, he stepped into a role that would define his career: Mike Brady, the ever-patient dad of a blended family in The Brady Bunch. While the show wasn't an instant hit, it grew into a cultural phenomenon, making Reed a household name. Outside of the Brady Bunch, Reed proved his talent as a dramatic actor. He received 3 Emmy nominations during his career, one for The Medical Center and others for Rich Man, Poor Man, and The Roots. These performances reminded audiences of his versatility and depth. Although Reed played the ideal father figure on screen, his real life was far more complicated. Privately, he struggled with his sexuality in an era where being openly gay could ruin an actor's career. Reed's friend and biographer Ted Nicholson later suggested that Reed longed for the life expected of him, a conventional heterosexual one, but felt trapped by cultural norms. During this time, Reed tried to conform to those expectations. In 1954, he married Marilyn Rosenberger, and the couple had one child, a daughter named Karen. But their marriage lasted only 5 years, ending in divorce in 1959. Despite his challenges, Reed was said to have maintained a strong bond with his daughter. Karen later recalled her father as loving and supportive, even as he struggled privately with his identity and the pressures of fame. In 1992, Robert Reed passed away at the age of 59 from complications related to bowel cancer. His death certificate also revealed his HIV-positive status, linking his death to AIDS-related complications, a detail that shocked many of his fans. Reed's AIDS-related death was even referenced in the 1994 film Reality Bites, a moment that underscored the cultural impact of his passing.
Many of us on these shows create ersatz families, and it's very difficult to do.
Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson, one of the greatest matinee idols of Hollywood's golden age. Born Roy Harold Scherer Jr. on November 17, 1925, in Winnetka, Illinois, Hudson grew up in a modest household. His parents divorced when he was young, and his stepfather gave him the name Hudson. Life wasn't easy. He struggled in school and worked various jobs to help support his family. After serving in the Navy during World War II, Hudson moved to Los Angeles with dreams of becoming an actor. By the 1950s, Hudson was Hollywood's heartthrob, starring in romantic dramas like Magnificent Obsession and All That Heaven Allows. Hudson reached the peak of his career with Giant in 1956, earning an Academy Award nomination for his role alongside Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean. He later became a comedic star with Doris Day in romantic comedies like Pillow Talk and Lover Come Back. While Hudson's career flourished, his personal life was a carefully guarded secret. Being gay in mid-20th century Hollywood was unthinkable. Careers could be destroyed by scandal. Hudson's agent orchestrated a sham marriage to Secretary Phyllis Gates in 1955 to quell rumors about his sexuality. The marriage lasted only 3 years, but Hudson remained a tabloid target throughout his life. In 1984, Hudson began showing signs of illness, but it wasn't until 1985 that the public learned he had AIDS. He became the first major celebrity to publicly acknowledge the disease, which was then shrouded in stigma and misinformation. His final public appearance, with Doris Day to promote her new animal charity, shocked the world. Hudson appeared frail and unrecognizable, sparking concern and speculation. Rock Hudson's AIDS diagnosis not only brought global attention to the disease, but also led to one of the most high-profile lawsuits of its time. At the center of the case was Mark Christian McGinnis, Hudson's former partner, who accused the legendary actor of knowingly concealing his HIV status while continuing their relationship. The lawsuit became a landmark case in the growing conversation about HIV, AIDS, and personal responsibility. In 1989, a jury awarded McGinnis $14.5 million in damages, later reduced to $5.5 million after appeals.
Shouldn't you be getting it?
Pedro Zamora. Pedro Zamora wasn't just a reality TV star. He was a trailblazer, an activist, and a symbol of hope for many during the darkest days of the AIDS epidemic. Known for his breakout role on MTV's The Real World, San Francisco, in 1994, Pedro used his platform to educate millions about living with HIV. Pedro Pablo Zamora was born on February 29, 1972, near Havana, Cuba, the youngest of 8 children. His family faced harsh conditions under Castro's regime, living in a modest home with a dirt floor. In 1980, during the Mariel boat lift, the Zamoras fled Cuba, leaving behind Pedro's eldest sister, a communist official, who chose to stay. They settled in Hialeah, Florida, where life wasn't easy. But Pedro thrived academically and became close to his mother, Zoraida. Pedro was a star student, excelling in academics and extracurriculars. But tragedy struck when his mother passed away from cancer when he was just 13. This loss deeply affected him, but also fueled his determination to succeed. Pedro became an honors student and even dreamed of becoming a doctor. When Pedro was 17, he was diagnosed with HIV. Instead of retreating, he turned his diagnosis into a mission to educate others. He began speaking at schools, churches, and community centers, raising awareness about HIV prevention. Pedro's ability to connect with people made him a rising star in AIDS education, and soon he was featured on national talk shows like The Oprah Winfrey Show and The Phil Donahue Show. In 1994, Pedro joined the cast of MTV's The Real World, San Francisco. He became the first openly gay, HIV-positive man to be featured on mainstream reality television. Through the show, Pedro shared his story with millions, breaking down barriers and challenging stereotypes. One of the most memorable moments on the show was Pedro's commitment ceremony with his partner, Sean Sasser. It was the first same-sex ceremony ever televised, a groundbreaking moment for LGBTQ+ representation. Their love story touched viewers around the world. Tragically, Pedro's health declined rapidly during the show's airing. He passed away on November 11, 1994, just hours after the finale of The Real World, San Francisco, aired. He was only 22 years old. Pedro's death was a devastating loss, but his legacy as an educator and advocate endures. Pedro's impact was so profound that even President Bill Clinton reached out to him during his final days, thanking him for putting a human face on the AIDS epidemic. If you'd like to know more about his extraordinary story, we recommend the film Pedro, 2008, which beautifully captures his legacy.
I remember being there and thinking, well, maybe something I'm doing is putting me at risk, but not.
Derek Jarman. Derek Jarman, a forward-thinking British director who turned cinema on its head in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Known for his avant-garde films, activism, and pioneering spirit, Jarman used his voice and art to challenge the establishment, making him one of the most iconic figures of the late 20th century. Derek Jarman was born on January 31, 1942 in Northwood, England. A natural-born artist, Jarman studied at King's College London and later at the prestigious Slade School of Fine Art. He initially pursued painting, and his early works were heavily inspired by classical art, but with a modern twist. Derek's career took a pivotal turn in the 1970s when he began designing sets for theater and film. This work introduced him to the world of cinema, and soon he was directing his own films. Jarman's debut feature, Sebastian, 1976, was groundbreaking, a daring, homoerotic interpretation of the life of Saint Sebastian, filmed entirely in Latin. Jarman was known for his bold, experimental style. His films like The Jubilee, 1978, explored themes of rebellion and counterculture, while The Caravaggio, 1986, reimagined the life of the legendary painter with striking visual artistry. His final film, Blue, 1993, was a poetic meditation on his battle with AIDS, featuring only a static blue screen accompanied by narration and music, a testament to his willingness to push boundaries even as his health declined. Jarman was openly gay at a time when it was still highly stigmatized in Britain. He became a fierce advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, often using his art to challenge societal norms and fight against homophobia. When he was diagnosed with HIV in 1986, Jarman didn't retreat. He became an even louder voice in the fight against AIDS, raising awareness through his work and activism. Derek Jarman passed away on February 19, 1994 from AIDS-related complications. He was just 52 years old. His death was a tremendous loss to the art and LGBTQ+ communities, but his legacy endures in his films, writings, and the lives he touched through his activism.
Loved all of that theatre glamour. Tell me about your father. My father was, I think my father, I would really like...
Peter Allen. Peter Allen was a showman, a songwriter, and an icon of the stage. Born Peter Woolnough on February 10, 1944, in the small town of Tenterfield, New South Wales, Allen showed a passion for music from an early age. His father tragically died by suicide when Peter was just 14, an event that deeply affected him and later inspired his iconic song, Tenterfield, Sadler. He found solace in music, eventually forming the pop duo, the Allen Brothers with friend Chris Bell. The duo gained popularity, performing in clubs and on television in Australia. Allen's big break came in the 1960s when the legendary Judy Garland discovered him performing in Hong Kong. She invited the Allen brothers to tour with her, introducing Peter to the international stage. Garland's mentorship was a turning point in his career and in his personal life. Through her, he met Liza Minnelli, who would become his wife. In 1967, Peter married Liza Minnelli, the daughter of Judy Garland. The union brought together two rising stars of the entertainment world. However, their marriage faced challenges. Allen later came out as gay, and the couple amicably divorced in 1974. Despite their separation, Liza and Peter remained lifelong friends. Peter Allen's talent as a songwriter made him a sought-after collaborator. He co-wrote hits for some of the biggest names in music, including I Honestly Love You for Olivia Newton-John and Arthur's Theme, Best That You Can Do, which won an Academy Award in 1981. In the 1970s, Allen began a long-term relationship with model Gregory Connell. However, their happiness was tragically cut short when Connell died of AIDS-related complications in 1984. The loss devastated Allen. After Connell's death, Peter Allen continued to perform, but his health began to decline. In 1992, he succumbed to AIDS-related throat cancer at the age of 48. Despite his untimely death, Allen's legacy lives on. His life and music were celebrated in the Tony Award-winning musical, The Boy from Oz, with Hugh Jackman bringing Allen's story to new audiences. Peter Allen may be gone, but his music and legacy will forever shine bright, just like the man himself.
Lived on manors, 52 years he sat on his veranda.
Which of these stars inspired you the most? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about the lives of iconic figures who changed the world.